Welcome to the first PLC round. The PLC round is something that Dr. Hargan and I started to let the community see inclusion at work and just what teachers are doing to make sure all students get across the achievement line together. We are in Atherton High School, and it is led by Principal Tom Averly, and he will be talking to you all in a little while. But as we go through the PLC round, the things that I charge you to really look for are teachers talking collaboratively about individual children. We are far past the idea of how are you going to get the kids from 36 and Garland across the achievement line, because we understand now that it's different. So how you get Tom across the achievement line might be different than how you get John across the achievement line, but they're all in the same class. And you will see it's a highly functioning PLC, and you will see these conversations around this individual movement as it relates to the Common Core and standards and how we're going to move these kids forward. A little bit about the PLC rounds. Last year, over 452 community members saw the PLC round, and big fans. I'm sure there's some stuck behind traffic because there was a big, huge traffic jam, so there might be some that come in. But this is just one of our ways Dr. Harkins is big on stakeholder involvement. This is just one of our ways to get community members into the schools to actually see the real work. Not talk about, not hear some big presentation, but actually you get to go into one of Dr. Averly's classes and see teachers doing what they do. It is not a dog and pony show. If we weren't here, they'd be doing the exact same thing. So you're just going to see some real teachers doing what they do to move students forward. I'm going to turn it over to the area superintendent, Kirk Lattimore. He can just say hi, and then we will give it to Dr. Averly. And then I'll jump back in and we'll take you through this.
Well, I want to welcome you to Area 5, but to actually Atherton High School. I'm always excited to come here because there's so many great things going on. Actually, I was here a couple of days ago for the community conversation. We actually got an opportunity to hear some kids talk about what they love about Atherton High School. So hopefully, before you leave today, you will have the opportunity to see some of the kids and just talk to them. This is a great school, great leader. I've been so blessed to have to work with these people. It's been wonderful. Anytime you can get teachers together to talk about moving kids forward, it's great. And I actually had the opportunity to sit on this Algebra PLC last year. And so they do a wonderful job. I think you're going to get a lot out of this experience. And I'm just so happy and glad to see you. And I now turn it over to Dr. Averly.
I don't know how much you know about us from the news or anything, but in the last 5 years, we've gone from being ranked 78th in the state to 7th in the state by U.S. News and World Report. So, but that didn't happen accidentally. It didn't happen because of one single thing. People love to ask me, what's the silver bullet, basically, is what they're asking. There is no silver bullet. It's about addressing the needs of every kid and looking at everything from school culture to academic achievement to student involvement to how we relate with kids to a safe school environment. So there's so many things that go into school success, student success. And you have the opportunity to observe our most veteran, true PLC department, the math department. They've always been probably our strongest collaborators to begin with because math is so well vertically aligned from freshman to senior year. It's very sequential. Every department is unique in their PLC status. English and math are both very vertical courses. One builds upon the next, whereas social studies and science, they're kind of standalone. There's vertical alignment there, but it's much more a subject is completed and then move on. And world languages are very much like a vertically aligned sequence there. So every department is unique, not just because of the nature of the curriculum, but by just the composition of the people that you have as well. And what you're going to see, our math department, they were really strong collaborators several years ago. I recognized that. I really wanted to help them foster the PLC type of collaboration. So Atherton is one of those that end up in the newspaper because we sent our math department to Orlando for a professional learning communities conference. I went with them. Every evening we're cranking out, how are we going to do collaboration, how are we working together, how do we do vertical alignment? And you're going to see the product of what that type of professional development training results in over the last 2 years now. That was 2 years ago. Our math ACT scores have increased, I think, 1.5 points in that 2-year period. By contrast, the state increased by 1/10 of 1 point. So there's to kind of understand what's driving Atherton success. you get maybe one snippet of, let's look at the math department, and you're only looking at Algebra 2, but see, our math teachers, they don't just teach Algebra 2, they'll teach geometry and Algebra 2 and pre-calculus maybe, three different preps. So geometry met yesterday. So a teacher may be collaborating several times a week for different subjects to talk about how horizontal alignment, how are you teaching the same subject, and then vertical alignment. Is geometry preparing them for Algebra 2, preparing them for the next level, applied math or college algebra or pre-calculus. So, those are the types of discussions that are always going on. And then addressing individual needs. All right, who are our struggling kids? Why are they struggling? What are they struggling with? And how are we determining that they're struggling with that with our common assessments? And one thing I've really embraced is giving teachers the autonomy to say, you know what, we know that right now these kids we need to focus on something. So they more often than not create their own common assessments to determine what kids are struggling with. And then we also use our proficiency in diagnostics as benchmarks for standards. All right, now that we feel like kids are progressing, where are they with regards to the benchmarking for those standards? So the math department's been exceptionally strong with that. So I'm excited about what you get to come in and see. And
All right, so Janine, we were talking about coming up with that enduring skill for the department. So is everyone in agreement that we'll focus on multiple representations for all the functions?
Yes.
Okay, great. And do we want to spend another couple minutes wording it, or do you say table that?
I'd like to think about it a little bit.
Okay. Okay, I think we'll have time at our faculty meeting maybe to revisit that. Do you want to add that to the notes?
Yeah, I'll do that.
All right. All right, so then last week we looked at our Algebra 2 assessment for Chapter 1, and we focused on the key topics that we all assessed. If I overlooked anything, I put function notation, input and output, domain and range, quadratics, factoring and formula, and I added linear equations. I don't remember if we talked about that, just as I was looking at my students, the number of kids that still struggle with solving linear equations. So I added that to a list of skills.
And
So-
what about evaluating functions given input and output? Did you
Oh,
put that?
good,
somewhere?
yeah, input and output, yeah. I lumped that, is that the same as like input and output?
Got it,
notation?
okay. All right.
All right, and then Taylor showed me how to make what do you want to tell them what we do with
Well,
our spreadsheet?
with spreadsheet, okay, so I showed you all about how to get into Google Drive.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm dubbing that the Google account, so our school Google account. Yeah, because we set it just so that you have to be a JCPS person to view this, and only if you have the link, and she emailed us the link. So when you log in, I mean, it's just a spreadsheet, but we can edit it at the same time, so you can see me. I'm logged in right there, and I can edit it.
So now, like, he's adding his students that struggled on a certain skill.
So we're going to compile all of our students together in one list?
Yeah.
Is that how that's going to work?
Will that work? That's just what I started as a
No, I think
framework.
that's
I think we
Great
should. No, I
idea.
agree. And
Yeah.
So just go to the
Dave,
link.
is that comfortable, or is just still like giving me, like I could take a paper one, or I could type it in, or?
Well, it's quicker for me if I just gave you a list.
That's
I'll get
great.
the list right
Great.
there.
We can, yeah. So just, again, make sure you log in with your school Google account when you use that link. And you can just add them in. There's a spot for the teacher there. So, yeah. And it's all up to date. You don't have to save it or anything.
Are you going to start doing pullouts, like
Yeah.
with certain groups?
Yeah, what do you
From
want?
that
the-
list right there.
Yeah, what do you want the first priority to be for interventions?
Domain range.
See,
Okay.
I don't have any issues with that.
I mean, we've been on it for a long time. I mean, I got kids still struggling.
Did you do
with
the
that.
domain and range finder, the little
Oh,
thing
did
that I
that thing
showed
showed
you?
us?
I did a modification of that. I did the popsicle stick one.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
okay. With the-
popsicle stick, okay, you go to the
Oh, yeah.
left, you know, and then you go, and a lot of kids picked up on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so domain
But-
range though.
I mean, one good thing about that is I think that'll be the smallest list of students,
Yeah.
because, I mean, just looking at this sample, most students did well on that task because that's what we hit the hardest. So if they're still struggling on that task,
That's
then
why.
that could be a key group to focus on. Whereas when I looked at the old skills from Algebra 1, the linear equations and quadratics, it was more of a laundry list of kids. That may just be that I have to do more, whole class intervention, not.
On that note there, Aaron, I'm still saying that my kids are still struggling with domain and range. But slowly but surely, I'm beginning to see the tide start to turn. And yesterday during ESS, I had 30 kids in there, and the question of domain and range came up, and a couple of them said, okay, I got it now. So the little light bulbs starting to come on now.
So is it that it's a new
maybe
topic and they just haven't had a chance
That's
to
what I
master it
think.
yet?
That's what I think.
So after that, are they still being able to identify what's a function, what's not a function? Can most of them still do? Can most of them do that? When you do the
Oh, with the graphically?
right graphically, yeah.
We could put that in the notation if you want.
Yeah,
Not
because
just-
that one,
But you went over there
I'm not
and
sure,
did
right,
that.
right. I'm not sure if I can say yes or no. I had that one question on the test about that. All right, Janine, I heard when Dave quickly said domain and range.
I didn't mean to butt in like that.
No, that was your
No,
opinion.
that's
No, so that
fine.
was your opinion. I felt like you had a different opinion.
I didn't have issues with domain and range. The thing that I had issues with was the quadratic formula, and it's only a few students, and I didn't really spend a lot of time doing it in class because I thought so many of them were doing really well with it. I thought that was a skill that.
So instead of doing a whole class thing on something that only a handful of kids
Right.
need, I could pull them out.
Right, so that, and then there were just a few that didn't know how to solve a system of equations. So mine are just like a couple kids that are missing some skills. It's not like a big class thing where I can go back and do a whole class.
Okay. All right, what's your
Um,
opinion?
I would go with the factoring. Yeah, because all the other ones for mine were fine. It was just that factoring. That was a big blow for a lot of them.
And did you say yours was formula and factoring?
No, mine
Quadratic.
actually, for the most part, we spent some time on factoring.
So
they
yours was
were-
more quadratic formula?
Yeah, because I didn't spend time on
Right,
it.
right,
I
right.
assumed,
Yeah.
That
I
was okay.
saw evidence that they seemed to know what they were doing, but some of them I had obviously never seen it before.
Are they having problem inputting the A, B, and C?
They
Or
they didn't do it in algebra, I don't think, or they didn't do it enough to where it was a skill that they retained.
Okay.
And so, they didn't know the formula, but then when you gave them the formula and they input the values, they could do that, but it was just the whole, how there's so many places where you can get messed up
Yeah,
when
right.
you're.
Especially with the calculator,
Right, yeah.
parentheses and stuff.
And what were you observing from our class? What they were struggling with the most?
Probably doing functions, and then what we were doing today with the bunny rabbit, trying to find,
The equation from the table.
right.
So I was bummed at like a handful of kids that just need a certain skill. So that's where I think it's a good intentional pullout. But I still had across the board, and we'll talk later about the specific kids, but in our class, like probably 5 kids that were across the board low on all the skills. So I bet you and I having the more struggling learners. Well, you've got a crowd too. How many sections do you have?
5. It's
No,
just that.
not all honors.
Honors, just 2.
Just
But it's
two.
just that 7th period that I
That
talked
was
about.
struggling,
Yeah.
okay.
By the way, Gene, do you guys ever show them about the fractional form, the quadratic formula? Where they just put it in as a fraction using the.
I've never seen that.
Okay, well, this is something that helps them a lot as far as just getting it from in the right format. So alpha y equals.
Oh, so when they put the formula in the calculator, they don't mess up all the parentheses and
Yeah.
negatives and stuff.
So
Okay.
alpha y equals enter, and it gets them in the fraction form. So then they can just type in it all. It just helps
So
them with
using the math
notation.
print fraction, just making sure it's in the math.
Yeah,
print.
that's just
Okay.
it
You know,
helps them.
what's
And they can put it
cool
all in at
about
once,
that-
and then they can copy it for the
What?
plus and minus.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what I was
So they don't
thinking,
have to
that's
retype it.
cool, so you can
So-
just press second enter.
Yeah.
Now, with the advanced kids, I like them to give exact form, so I usually have them do like
Mhm.
what's under the radical first
Right.
and do all that at one step so they don't mess it up, and then simplify it from there, but this would be really good.
It's great for honors, especially if
Yeah,
they're
that's
having
cool.
issues with that.
All right, so maybe I can go ahead and just pull 2 groups and see what I can pull off. And so one crowd is, so after I get everybody's names. One crowd that's kids still struggling with the new content, domain and range, and then a separate intervention for kids that are not doing well with quadratics, either formula or factoring. Is that a good summary of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you gonna have a maximum number?
I don't have a I roughly try to keep the interventions till like 12 because I feel like when it hits double digits, I can't really give them the attention.
I
Even
agree.
if 12's too
It's
big.
not intervention, right?
Usually then it's like
Tell
3
me about
groups
that.
and I can, but yeah, probably under 12,
Should've
like
seen him
8, 2
yesterday.
groups of, yeah, I know, that's a struggle, right? I mean, you're.
He had a whole classroom after school.
It's almost counterproductive, you know, 30 kids for ESS after
Okay.
school.
Yeah, right. Okay, I just kind of skipped on actually the shared success strategy idea. I just kind of
Great.
did that for our next.
That's probably time to move on anyway,
Yeah,
right?
so,
All right, so
Sure.
we are all in agreement on our enduring skill for our professional growth plan. We just got to tune it up.
Tune it up, yeah.
We're okay on a game plan for the interventions based on our last assessment. Clements shared a cool idea. And then we talked about having a quick exit slip for our new chapter. So I think I copied you an exit slip. I think it's in the packet. Janine, do you remember this from a year or two ago? You and Jay?
I don't think.
What, the exit slip one?
Maybe it was something you and I did. Right? It's like right here.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, so it's like 2 half sheets. And I think what I'd like to do this year is, since I have round tables, Rebecca's always getting on me about doing multiple versions, and that's really paying off. She is, she's the queen of that, she's always.
Oh, yeah.
But it does help, just making
so
some
at least we'd
slight
have 2.
modifications,
you
right,
want
having 2
Yeah,
versions.
that's something that's good.
Just so that there's less cheating. But
Mhm.
we're all at the beginning of the unit on sequences, so
Mhm.
I'm assuming, looking at last year's notes, like there was 1 arithmetic, 1 geometric, quickly try to write a rule and identify what type
Mhm.
of, and that was an exit slip I thought you and I used in the past, probably not last year, but when we both did the
I remember
honors.
this, yeah, yeah.
Is this any other edits besides making 2 versions?
Maybe 2 versions would be good.
All right, what about the advanced class? Does it still meet your need?
Well, if it's just an exit slip, yeah. When did you all give this last year? Was it after the n=1 lesson or?
Well, I think they could do this after 2-1-6.
Yeah, that's the thing though. I didn't do the n=0.
I did.
I started.
I think it's,
I'm right there at n=0. I mean, that's where I'm at right there.
I mean,
And I was thinking
we
about.
write that in our notes. We've got to talk about that next week because we got to
Again?
get our heads straight.
N
I know,
equals
again.
Every year, it's a yearly thing, n=0, n=1, which is it?
I know, I mean, like, right now with the bunny population one, we had the 0 term.
You did both. You did 1 over 1. I just let them do pick
Well,
from
and
money
that's just an
from.
exponential function. I mean, you haven't
Right.
started talking about the
Right,
sequences yet.
right, we didn't, right, we
Not
were
yet.
just, we were kind of hinting towards that y = a times b to the x, which was still good for the 0 term.
Mhm.
But you're right, this looks like it was prior to worrying about any.
You know,
N=1, right.
I actually had my kids, like, when we were doing, when we were doing the bunny thing, we had a little bit of time at the end of one of the lessons, and I gave them tables of data and had them write the rule, and I had like 1 linear, and I had 2 exponential, or actually 3 exponential. And the last exponential, I didn't put the 0th term. I started with the first term to see if they could still write it, and most all of them got it right. They were able to just go back and figure out what it was. I mean, it wasn't a big
Right,
deal.
okay.
So I just went ahead and
So we don't make it a
started.
big deal. Yeah.
Well-
Right, I think the only time where it still caught us is when they were going online to the homework help.
Yes,
And some
yes.
answers. So if we just be
Right.
upfront with that. I mean, I do agree, the faster we get to that symbolic notation for their end of course, then the easier it is.
I will say, in the one I did today, this is 2-1-5, it says you can assume the first term is n=0. So that's why today, especially,
Yeah.
we're
See, I
n=0.
can't stand doing it the wrong way, even if it's only
I know,
temporary.
Because we don't want them to have it, right. I think it fits for the real context situations, you know, for the bunny population, for the ball
Exactly.
drop, when it's a real context and you have your 0 term, that's your starting
Right.
point, you can
Mhm.
write your model.
Yeah.
That's all good. It's when it's those generic sequences and you're trying to fit that test format,
Right.
that why not start them on the right track? That, hey, mathematicians typically start with n=1
Do you want
as
to
their
see my
first sequence.
handout that I gave
They need to
them?
see it, yeah, because we used it last year. I don't know if you
Let me see if
remember.
I
Yes,
can-
as I
Because
recall, that was
I've
a
used
good
that
one.
the last couple of years for notes on that.
Yes.
So.
Is it just about saying? I mean, I've told them there's a big issue. I just keep saying, hey guys, we'll talk about this at some point.
It's a graphic organizer, and it's a good hard paper copy.
It's
that you
not.
can turn into electronic for the kids.
It's not an issue with the Pi Pods because we
that's
talk
different.
about.
That's not your chart.
What chart are you talking about?
Keep talking.
You have.
No, this is just the handout I give them because I explain what I'm doing and I notated the problems where they have to change and told them exactly what to change. And I explained that you always start with n = 1. I explained why the book does it differently for the first
Okay.
couple lessons, but that we're going to do it the
So are
right
these
way.
notes to yourself, or these notes?
These are
you
notes
share
I
with
gave to
them?
the kids.
Okay.
This is, I told them about it, and I gave them a handout, and I identified the problems in the homework, because, you know, once you hit n = 1, it's not an issue
Right.
anymore.
Right.
It's just like these early lessons where they do it starting with n = 0, which I think, when I tried it the first year, it just made everything confusing in me. Even at the end of the year, the kids were like, do I start with n = 0 or n = 1? It was just a big, at least the way I did it, it didn't work for me at all. Huh? No.
Oh.
I'm terrible about sending digital copies.
I know, we're gonna get her
I
dropping
can-
everything in a Dropbox.
I mean, I probably have it, if you
I'm
want
okay
digital
with
copies, I'll look through my files.
Take your,
Don't
take a
waste your
picture.
time. Yeah, that's what I can just. Well, because what I was gonna do is just tweet it out anyways and tweet it out. And,
Oh, that would be a good plan.
I did the last night, by the way. I tweeted.
Do you put it on your website though?
This?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know where the digital copy for this is.
No,
It's somewhere in my file.
Last night I tweeted out an example of one of the factoring
I
problems.
didn't open it yet.
Oh, but it's okay. It's okay.
I did see it.
It was 17 views from students checking out that tweet that had number 14 from that problem set you gave me.
I was like, oh, cool, Taylor tweeted.
Yes, and so now
cool.
you can just retweet it. All your
Oh,
students will
there
be able to
you
see
go.
it and say, hey, look,
Okay.
it's number 14 from that example set, and it's I
Nice.
did it on the iPad just sooner at that.
Okay.
So that's what I was going to do with this. Just tweet it out. Say, hey guys, make sure you look at this.
Cool.
Well, if you already started with a 0, you might just want to follow through with that until the n = 1.
When does that?
And then-
I need to.
It's
Couple
a
lessons.
couple
It's-
lessons.
It's a little too
It's-
late.
it's
Like, we
actually-
talked
218.
about-
218. So
We
that's
talked
what
about
it's-
bringing it up a lot sooner so that when they saw those sequences, they weren't confused with notation.
And plus, Aaron, weren't there a couple of problems on the EOC last year
Yes.
that had n = 1?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they were-
you
they were all-
should
they were all
assume,
equal,
you should
I think.
assume unless if there's a context, like, you know, word situation, it's usually a 0 term. If
Right.
it's just a generic sequence of numbers,
Yeah.
it's a first term. So we've got to get the kids comfortable with that notation, and
Exactly.
that matches
Right.
the EOC. This is yours, and this is what I thought you were talking about.
What is that?
It's your graphic organizer on
Do you have that
explaining
somewhere?
arithmetic and
Gosh.
geometric sequences, and
You don't remember it?
I've used it every single year.
I wonder if I saw a
Give me a
copy of
copy
it.
of that.
I got a
is
white
good. Yeah,
hard
I
copy.
remember. I remember that.
Oh.
If you, well, no, I mean, then we don't have this problem.
All right,
It's
cool.
possible. I'll look it up.
I need to get better at organizing and keeping my files.
This was a lifesaver, and this was always their note,
Cool.
so it really
Okay.
helps. And we talked about how you had to go back to the 0 term. So if you were given the sequence 150, 15, blah blah blah, that's the first term, and
Mhm.
you go back and figure it out. So that's what I've always used since you brought that up. Maybe it was 2 years ago.
I'll get you.
All right.
You remember.
Hello, Sybil. Okay.
And before we start, this is a PLC. It's different than when I was teaching because if I was in the teacher's lounge with Jackie, we're talking about why that person missed the tackle Friday night. So we're doing, the teaching profession has moved towards really this kind of stuff. I always say there's a difference between collaboration and collaboration. What you just saw was a lot of collaboration. And there's some things that are going on inside PLCs that's really moving the district forward. But I just want to open it up to the community for questions and comments, and I'll open it up with a patriot of the PLCs and dear friend, Dr. Thomas.
And can I add that you, with your question, you also say like where you're from, so we can get a
Hey, I'm Shelley Thomas. I'm a teacher educator at the University of Louisville in the Department of Middle Secondary Education. So I was a JCPS teacher, not a math teacher, I was a social studies teacher. But my area of focus with our pre-service students and also practicing students is culturally responsive teaching and multicultural education. And so, and I think having been a JCPS teacher and worked and an advocate and a JCPS parent, first of all, I have to say that you know, I appreciate so much that you all are focused on the skills and making sure every single child gets to those skills and not leaving anyone out. And I think that's so different from the conversations we had before where we were like, oh, well, Shelley doesn't get it. Well, that'll be okay. You know, she's just never gonna get it. Instead, we're thinking about what strategies we need. My question for you, and what I would like to go back to my own students for, explaining, is how you bring in the backgrounds, the cultural experiences, the identities of your students into discussions of Algebra 2.
It's a tough one. It started off hard.
Well, I mean, let me just share something that happened to me recently. I've got a young Somali young lady who I was able to work one-on-one with her, and just listen to her, her background, what she was taught, how she was taught, and I thought to myself, wow, this is interesting. This is why she does certain problems like the way she does. So the one-on-one conversations that take place with those kinds of students is one way that I do it.
Yeah, and I don't know if I ever thought of it in the way that you put it, but I know a lot of times when we're working with students, we do kind of look, you know, students will take different approaches to problems, and I think we kind of tend to, you know, like, work with students more individually and kind of understand the way they're doing it, and you know, we give them the, you know, leeway to like have multiple strategies when they're solving problems, and then we try to make connections between the different ways that maybe I showed them how to do the problem in a way a student naturally gravitates to doing the problem. And every student's work is a little bit different, and I think we respect their work in the way that they do it. And then, you know, kids get up a lot of times and share different, and I know I learn a lot from my students, just their different approaches to the problems, which may not necessarily be the way that I would have done it, but that's always kind of insightful.
A quick example, I mean, very quickly here. This young lady I spoke with, she used arrows to indicate adding, subtracting, to get from one side to the other side of the equation, as opposed to subtracting or adding on both sides. She didn't use subtraction, she used arrows. So that's one way.
It's a tough question. You got any?
Dwayne, any questions or comments, or anyone else with a question
One question. I'm Dwayne Compton. I'm Director of Minority Teacher Recruitment at the University of Louisville. And just made note of you. You seem to be the younger of the teachers. That's just an assumption. And you're the one with the technology.
What gives it away?
And talking about tweeting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, that's something that I would take back to our students in terms of being creative and utilizing the technology to communicate through social media networks to get to students, because you know, I have a daughter who's in the 9th grade who is also going through factoring and all these other things you're talking about. So for me, it's more of a comment. It's just good to see that technology is being used to reach students because that's where they are. So you meet them where they are. So it's good to see that.
Teaches us a lot.
I'm Carol Ewan, and I'm with the Pritchard Committee, the Governor's Commonwealth Institute for Parent Leadership, working with parents. And to piggyback on what you just said, the tweeting and all, and it's so different from when we went to school, and trying to get parents to understand that this is what the classroom looks like now. Do you all do much with flipped classrooms?
There's conversation.
Yeah, I definitely embrace certain elements of it. Like, for example, I found a resource this past summer where they could watch a video and I just assign it, and I create it, and I kind of adapt videos and embed assessment questions within it, and that could be just an easy, quick 5-10 minute homework assignment. Watch this video, tell me or describe to me how this person came and solved this problem. And it's a very quick, easy thing, and I can track everyone, what they watched, how much of it they watched, if they watched it all, and what their answers were. I mean, so I wouldn't say that any of us embrace a full flipped classroom, but just elements of it. So, because I don't think that flipped classroom is an extremely broad term. So, I just certainly put elements of it, but
and we were just talking. This was just a hallway conversation the two of us were having, that the five of us haven't had yet. But just how do we keep the type of mathematics instruction we believe in, which was student-centered, inquiry-based, where the kids are discovering and hearing the multiple representations from each other and the different ways of thinking. How do you keep that alive as you bring more technology in, which can become isolated? that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was, I mean, it's like you gotta watch that balance.
We're just in a very funny transition period. The whole
Well, and I
world
like
is.
the way that you can keep track of who's viewing what, you know, and that helps immediate feedback for you.
Yeah.
So,
So, and last question, then if there's more questions for us.
Yeah, after this question, I can stay on and we could go to my room, but they gotta get to their classes.
So typically, U of L's Spalding and Bellarmine brings students, aspiring teachers, to the PLC rounds to see that. And the question that I always normally ask students, but I'll ask you all, how different is, or what is some of the things at the university, other than the questions that have already been answered? Why would you see a benefit in students coming to see the PLC rounds that they're seeing? Because, like I said, normally, and Dr. Menace just texted, he turned around, there was too much traffic. Normally, they'll bring students. So aspiring teachers need to see this in hopes of what? Because a lot of universities, it started with Dr. Thomas, but a lot of universities have jumped on the bandwagon and said, I need them to see PLC rounds.
First thing that comes to mind, and I've worked with young teachers across the district for the last 5 to 9 years, that if a student teacher had a very traditional background in their own education, like they're, and especially connecting to the diversity question, if they were in a very middle class neighborhood and had a very traditional schooling and went to a, you know, not very diverse university, they had like one method of learning, and it's amazing how set in their ways new teachers can be. I'm not talking about Taylor, but just in general, as I work with large teachers, it's like,
Can you speak to that a little more? I mean,
this is the way I learned it, so this is the way I need to teach it. So when I work with them on other ways that we've talked about in our curriculum work that we chose in Jefferson County, they're like, no, that won't work. I'm like, oh my God, you taught 1 year. How are you already set in your ways? You know, where we've taught, we're in our 20 years, right? So, you know, and so we're still looking. I mean, we talk all the time about new ways. So maybe if we feel like new teachers might not have that growth mindset, that's a trend, that growth mindset of you're always learning and you're always needing to learn from each other. So, I don't know, that's what first came to mind.